back to my channel and welcome to today's video. Today's video is going to be my August mid-month wrap-up. I can't believe that we are already halfway through the month of August. It's crazy how quickly time has going past, and I am going to share with you the books that I have read so far this month. So far this month I've had quite a good reading month. I've read 8 books in total and most of them have been 4 or 5 star reads. I've had a couple, I think 3 stars. I'm just having a quick through my list. Yeah, a couple of 3 stars, but for the most part everything's been a 4 or 5 star, so I'm really happy with what I've read so far this month. And as always, I'm just going to dive straight into the books I have read. So starting off with the beginning of the month, I finished reading Keeping 13 by Chloe Walsh. This is book 2 in the Boys of Tommen series, and I gave this one 5 stars. I really enjoyed this one. This one is the sequel to Binding 13 and follows Johnny and Shannon, and it is a continuation of their story. So you do definitely need to have read Binding 13 before you can dive into this one. And I can't really give too much away because obviously, as I say, it is a sequel, and you do need to have read Binding 13. I don't want to spoil too much of Binding 13, but basically this follows a Johnny and Shannon who are in secondary school, and they meet on Shannon's first day at school when she kind of takes a shortcut and ends up running through the school field where Johnny is playing rugby. Shannon left her old school because she was being severely bullied by a group of girls, and so she is making a new start at the Tommen College. As I say, she meets Johnny, and from their first meeting, he has this kind of draw towards her. She ends up getting hit in the face with a rugby ball completely by accident. It's just like wrong place, wrong time sort of thing. And from there they are instantly drawn together. Both characters have different kind of traumas and struggles that they're going through, which I won't go into too much detail here, but they are both going through a lot. So these are quite heavy reads. There is a lot of difficult subject matters that are covered in this series and in these 2 books in particular, so I would recommend going into these with caution if you are sensitive to anything to do with like domestic violence, bullying, sports injuries, alcoholism, drug problems. There's a lot of things that are covered in here, and yeah, so I would recommend caution if you are triggered by any of those things. And I feel like it's wrong to say that I had a good time reading these books because of the subject matter, but these books, I listened to them on audio and it really does feel like these characters are real. I feel like I can easily picture them in my mind. I feel like this book series would make a good TV show because the characters feel so vivid in my mind. And although they are really long, I mean, you can see this one was a long book, over 700 pages, I think. Oh, actually, just over 800 pages this one was. And the audiobook was like, I think, like 25 hours or something like that. Oh no, 32 hours, sorry, I've got it here. The first 2 books, the audiobook for some reasons are split into 2 parts, but in total it works out to like over 32 hours. And I flew through it. I wanted to keep reading it. I was enjoying the audiobooks for these, and I just cannot recommend this series enough. I know a lot of people have been talking about this series recently, and I definitely agree with the hype. I think it is worth it, and I cannot wait to continue on with the rest of the books. Then I read Hardly a Gentleman by Eloisa James. This is book 2 in the Accidental Bride series, and I gave this one 4 stars. So this one follows Clara and Kaylin. Clara has had a few different seasons and she's not really had any luck with finding a future husband. Unfortunately for her, she has attracted the attention of Prince George, and he is quite a lecherous character, and definitely the attention that he puts towards Clara is definitely unwanted. But because he is showing her attention, a lot of other bachelors are afraid to approach her because they do not want to go against the prince. And she is at one of these parties that take place during the season, and she unfortunately has a bird do its business on her, and the prince is there immediately kind of wiping it off her, and kind of touching her up in the process, and she reacts badly to that, as most people would, but obviously for this time period it wasn't appropriate for her to react badly because it was the prince that was doing it. So her mother is not very happy with her reaction to the prince, and so her mother decides to send her off to Scotland to live with this very distant relative that Clara has never met. Clara decides that she doesn't want to do this and ends up pretending to be a housekeeper and ends up at Caelan's castle. Caelan is a widow. His wife died a few years ago, and everyone thinks that he was deeply in love with his wife and is still very much grieving for her because he's let the castle fall into a state of disrepair. And then obviously Clara comes, and she is supposed to be the housekeeper that he has hired, but he quickly realises that she is no housekeeper, and it is their romance. I really enjoyed this one. This one was a lot of fun. Eloisa James really writes a good romance in this one. As I say, I like the romance. There's a lot of humorous moments as well in here, although there are some slightly darker topics with obviously what's happening with Prince George. For the most part, this was a load of fun and definitely one of my favourites from Eloisa James that I've read recently. I would definitely recommend this one. Then I listened to Glow of the Everflame, which is book 2 in the Kindred's Curse series by Penn Cole. This one, as I say, is a sequel, so I won't give too much away. But basically in this one, we have a group of people who have powers and are seen as being the superior group of people, and DM is our main character, and for her whole life she's always thought of herself as being one thing, but it turns out that there is more to her than meets the eye, as with a lot of fantasy romance. And this one we get to see her taking on the throne. I'm not sure if that might be a little bit of a spoiler actually, for the first book, but it's in the blurb of the second one, so I feel like if you read the blurb, you kind of know that she does take the throne, and there is a lot of political things happening in this one. A lot of people aren't happy that she is on the throne, and it's basically her kind of journey to becoming on the throne and kind of dealing with the political unrest that kind of comes with that. There's a lot going on in this one, but I did have a really good time reading it and listening to it, and I gave this one 5 stars. I think it's a lot of fun. I'm really enjoying this series so far, and I cannot wait to pick up the third book. The romance in here is definitely a slow burn, and I'm really liking seeing that develop, so I can't wait to see it in future books. Then I read Gods and Monsters by Shelby Mahurin. This is the third and final book in the Serpent and Dove trilogy, and I gave this one 3 stars. So I really enjoyed the first book in this series, which was Serpent and Dove. I gave it 5 stars, and then the second and third book were really disappointing in comparison. So the premise of this series, it basically starts out as a witch and a witch hunter falling in love, at the very kind of basic premise for it. And I liked the first book. I liked seeing the characters kind of fall for each other and kind of finding out a bit more about the world. And then the series kind of becomes more to do with kind of the war against the witches, and our main character's mother, who is like seen as like a evil witch, so to speak, and she's trying to destroy her daughter, and it becomes very much about that, and the romance is definitely a very much put on the back burner for the rest of the books, I would say. My biggest complaint about this series is the books are far too long. I really lost interest in this book. A lot of it could have been cut out, in my opinion, because it just dragged on so long. So yeah, overall, I'm not sure if I would necessarily recommend this series as a whole. I would definitely recommend the first book, but you could probably get away with not continuing on with the series. I don't feel like the second and third books really added too much for me. I would have been quite content with just sticking at the first book. So definitely not a favourite. Then I read Riley Sager's new book, which is With a Vengeance, and I really enjoyed this one and gave this one 4 stars. So this one we are following a main character called Anna, who is trying to kind of get revenge on a group of people. Her family got destroyed when a train crashed, and her brother was on board the train when it crashed. Her father got the blame for the train crash and ended up getting killed in prison, and her mum couldn't deal with the grief and ended up committing suicide. So Anna wants to get revenge. There are 6 people who were to blame for the train crash, and following the death of her aunt, she finds out about these 6 people, and she kind of decides that she's going to get her revenge on them. And to do this, what she's going to do is put them on a train journey that's like a long train journey from like I can't remember where it goes from and to, but it's a 13-hour train journey, and she basically wants these people to suffer. So she's going to take them on this train journey, and at the end of the train journey, the police are going to be waiting to arrest these 6 people. Unfortunately, things do not go to plan, and a number of people end up dead, and we are trying to figure out what's going on. Obviously, there's only so many people on this train, there's only so many people that it can be, and we followed them on their journey, and obviously it spans over 13 hours, and it's kind of like counting down to their destination, and who's going to still be alive by the end of it. I had a good time reading this. I will say in terms of the plot, it's not like the most original storyline, but Riley Sager did really well at kind of building the suspense in this one. I did want to keep reading it. I read the majority of it in one sitting. It only took me like a day to read, and as I say, the majority of it I did read in one sitting, because I just was so invested in the story and wanted to find out what was going to happen. There were some things that I had predicted, but there were other things that I didn't predict. So overall, I did really enjoy this. I know a lot of people aren't enjoying this one, but I did have a good time reading it. It's not my favourite Riley Sager by any stretch, but I did enjoy it, and I would recommend it. Then I read A Fate Forged in Fire by Hazel McBride. This is book 1 in the Bonded to Beasts series, and I gave this one 3 stars. So I have seen this one talked about a lot on TikTok. It's been quite hyped. I feel I've seen it quite talked about quite a lot, and sadly I didn't love this one. So in this one we are following Amira, who is the heir to the throne, and in this world, many years ago, it was run by women. It was always a queen that was on the throne, and then things changed and the men took over, and it became that there was always a king, and Amira, as I say, is in line to get this throne, and she has for the majority of her life kind of lived a normal life away from the kind of capital, and kind of lived a quite quiet life as a blacksmith apprentice. And when the current king dies, she goes to the capital to claim her throne. But of course it's not as easy as that, and there are people that do not want her to be on the throne, and do not want a woman to be on the throne. And this one was just okay. She ends up having to marry the prince, because for like political reasons, basically they won't accept her on the throne, but kind of because she's got this magic power, they want to kind of marry her into the family, so they kind of force her to marry the prince. And as I say, there's a lot of political and religious stuff that's talked about in this book, which I don't necessarily always love, and the romance in here, I wasn't super invested in either. I feel like this was just an okay read for me. Like there were things that I did enjoy, and I didn't like completely hate reading this, but I also didn't love reading this, and I wasn't super invested in either the main story of her becoming the queen or the romance. And seeing as I wasn't really overly interested in either of those things, I don't plan to continue on with this series. It just didn't, unfortunately, work for me. Then I read Cursebound by Sarah L. Arifi. This is book 2 in the Faebound trilogy, and I enjoyed this one and gave this one 4 stars. I'm really enjoying this trilogy. It's very easy to read, and I feel like it goes by really quickly. One thing that I did really appreciate in this one is that obviously it's a sequel, and although I had read Faebound only a couple of months ago, some of the elements of the story I'd kind of forgotten about, but the author did a really good job at the beginning of this one of kind of summarising the main events of the first book. She did this in the form of a character's journal, and it felt very natural that the character would have had a journal, so reading her kind of journal summary of the events didn't feel like too info dumpy or anything like that, and it felt very natural that was how the story was kind of summarized. And I really appreciated that, because I don't always have the time to go back and read the first books before reading sequels, and sometimes you do forget things, especially if you're reading lots of books and lots of similar types of books. Some of the plot points can kind of become merged in your mind, but I did really appreciate that. But in this one we are following Yiran, who is a elf, and in this world there were 3 groups of people that were created: elves, fae and humans. But the elves believe that the fae and the humans are extinct, and they are kind of the only ones that are left, and they have been warring between themselves. And at the beginning of Faebound, obviously I won't talk too much about the plot for this second book, but in Faebound, Yiran is a captain in the army, and she does something that the chieftain doesn't agree with, so she gets exiled. And while she's in exile, she discovers the fae, and she ends up becoming bound to one of their creatures that they have. The fae can bind to these creatures and have this special bond, and Yiran ends up bonding to them and discovering the fae, and she becomes immersed in their world. And book 2 kind of continues where book 1 left off, and new things are revealed in this one. In this one, Yiran's sister Lettel is becomes more of a central character, and there are people that are wanting to kill Lettel, and that is kind of a big portion of the book in terms of they're trying to figure out who is after Lettel and why they're after her. And yeah, I had a good time reading this one. I can't wait for the 3rd and final book to come out next year. I think this is a really solid trilogy, and one that I would definitely recommend. And then lastly, I have The Teller of Small Fortunes by Julie Long. This is a standalone, and this is a really cozy fantasy. This one I feel is a cozy fantasy is just the best summary for this book, because it is so the stakes in here are so low, but I had a really good time reading this. This one I gave 4 stars to. In this one we are following Tao, who is a as the title suggests, teller of small fortunes. She travels the world that this is set in, travels through town to town, pitches up, she travels in her wagon with her mule, and she kind of travels from town to town and pitches up her wagon and tells small fortunes to people. Nothing major, but just small fortunes that don't really have any great impact on their lives. And she has always travelled alone, and she ends up meeting a bunch of different characters along the way and kind of ends up kind of almost forming like a found family type thing. So she ends up meeting, is it Mash and Silt, I think is his name. And initially she thinks that they are highwaymen and they are going to rob her, but she quickly finds out that they are not and they're completely innocent. They are actually searching for Mash's daughter, who has disappeared. He believes that she has been kidnapped, and when Tao does she reads their fortunes, one of the fortunes that she gives to Mash is that she sees him giving a kitten to his daughter. This is before she knows the daughter is missing, and then he obviously advises her that his daughter has gone missing, and they go on this kind of journey together to try and find his daughter. And along the way they meet another character who kind of joins their group as well. And it's just like a really fun, easy, cozy read. Like, this didn't take me long to finish at all. It's just over 300 pages, like 322 pages. So you can fly through this really quickly. And I think for the upcoming kind of cozier months, I think this would be a really perfect read, because it's just a breath of fresh air, really, because there is some kind of conflict in here, but not a lot. And as I say, cozy is just the word for this book. It was just a fun read. We follow for a few chapters just Tao journeying through different towns and meeting different characters, and telling their fortunes. And as I say, it was a really good time, and one that I would definitely recommend picking up if you are looking for something that is on the lighter side and just kind of like something to kind of read in between some more heavier books. I would really recommend this one. And those are the 8 books that I have read so far this month. As I say, I've had a good reading month. A lot of the books that I have read have been on the longer side, so that's why I say only read 8, but in comparison to previous months I've read at this point, at the halfway point, I've often read a bit more than that. But as I say, a lot of the books that I've read so far have been on the longer side, particularly at the beginning of the month. So far, really happy with what I've read, and I can't wait to see what I read in the second half of the month. If you'd like to let me know what you have read so far, what your favourite read has been so far for this month, I would love to hear that. And I will see you guys in my next video.